Welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane Kay. Today, I'm breaking down the newest episode of Grey's Anatomy, Season 18, Episode 11, titled Legacy. I think this episode has been better than some of the others we've had lately. It was a little too gory for my taste, even though somehow I used to watch a lot of horror movies. But seeing the brain being drilled and the heart and the liver and all that stuff just made me a little bit queasy. I had to look away with a pillow over my face during some scenes, but there were subtle callbacks to older episodes, like the little episode music spots for effect and awkward scenes. Those same music notes, like a little jingle, was used in an earlier season as well. I don't really ship Nick and Meredith. I think that they're trying really hard to make him very Derek-esque with the haircut and the personality type, even the way that he speaks and his tone. And if Meredith is going to have a new love, maybe they should just go in the opposite direction, like completely different than Derek. She had a Derek. There won't be another. Maybe give her something a little different. There was also a mention of Joe's bar and a scene at Joe's with a dartboard included. The only thing missing was Joe. I would have liked to see that actor reprise that role, if only for nostalgia's sake. They also had a longer scene in the gallery, like they used to do in the old days, and they tried to get us a little bit more in touch with the patients and add a little bit more in depth to the patients this episode. Dr. Weber even went to try to have an epic heart-to-heart with Levi, but Levi seems beyond help, and I think this will be a huge mental health issue for Levi that he has to get over. I think Kai and Amelia will last a while. Okay, let's get into the episode, so spoiler alert. Meredith Grey is walking home after going on a morning hike, and Meredith walks in the kitchen, and Maggie thinks it's out of the ordinary for Meredith. And Meredith explains that the fresh air clears her head. Today is the big day where they're going to do the experimental procedure and operate on Dr. Hamilton. Initially, no one was allowed in the gallery to watch, and Maggie's not too happy about that. She says, "You go make history. I'll take the kids to school." Zola is watching Meredith's mom, Dr. Ellis Gray's Whipple tape. Again, it's something that she does often, and it's the same Whipple tape that Meredith used to watch with her roommates back in the original seasons. Nick has a patient with end-stage liver disease, and he's waiting on a liver, and he is getting his patient a liver today. Jo darkens her hair to her usual color, and I think it looks 10 million times better, her being a brunette, than her being a platinum blonde. It just, in my opinion, didn't suit her. Jo had a long night. She's been working a lot of nights lately, and Link worries that she's avoiding him. Dr. Billy's fanboy brings her green juice. The coffee cart was out of the stuff to make it, so he reminded them to get it, and he brought her drink. It's obvious he has a thing for her, and it's been obvious since his arrival. I hope Bailey stays with Ben. I like Ben. With her, they balance each other out, and they bring out each other's best, and they complement each other in the areas that they're different from each other. A medical school friend called Bailey, and he works with NASA at the Aerospace Medicine Fellowship. They do research on innovative devices designed to identify and combat spatial disorientation and vestibular abnormalities, and Bailey is telling her fanboy about it, but he already knows all about it. He read the paper. Bailey says this is a program that works on the two things she has dreamt about most in her entire life: medicine and space. She has been asked to run their clinical training, but she thinks it's the worst time possible in her life to go. Bailey's resident tells her that he got an offer to go into space just when he thought she couldn't get any more amazing, and she goes and breaks the stratosphere. Dr. Hamilton is healthy enough for surgery. He is recording a narration of how humbled he is that the team is getting together to realize his remarkable vision, and he's humbled by how far they've come. Amelia, Kai, and Dr. Gray are there going over his results, saying he's good to go for surgery, and he's recording this narration with them in the room. What an ego. Amelia asks what he's doing, and he says it's for his book. He asks how they think history books are written. Someone makes a record for posterity, and that's exactly what he's doing. Meredith says she, Amelia, and Dr. Bartley will publish in medical journals, and he will be there as patient X. He will be in the medical articles. Dr. Hamilton asks if there is a bigger room available to accommodate all of these egos. Meredith tells him she's still here even though 11 days ago his arrogance and dishonesty nearly ruined the entire project. I appreciate that Meredith puts him in his place. Levi is a zombie, his beard is growing in, his hair is disheveled, and he's just zoned out playing video games on the couch all day long, ignoring the world. This patient death will be more than a minor depression for Levi, I fear. Weber comes to visit him, and that reminds me of the old days, the talks that Weber had with Derek when he found out his mortality rate, and I believe he was being sued, and he hit Meredith's engagement ring into the wilderness with a baseball bat. It's also like the time Christina stopped operating and she tried being a bartender and Derek took her fishing and eventually she came back to work. Or when Izzy was baking all day long after Denny and eventually Bailey went to the house and had a talk with her and stopped her from bailing and encouraged her to go into work. Weber is standing in Levi's basement and Levi just keeps playing his game, not showing any respect for Richard. Richard says he thought they could talk. Levi dies in the game and he explains to Richard that every time he closes his eyes, he sees blood pouring out of Devin's body while hearing his voice inside his head. During the surgery, Levi was listening to Devin's podcast. He says he doesn't mean to be rude, but talking about it doesn't help him. The game helps him. And he goes back to playing. Owen is in his hospital bed and the therapist comes to do some stretching and therapy exercises, and he tells Owen his muscles will atrophy if he doesn't use them. Owen is adamant. He yells no, he refuses. He wants to do it on his own. He wants to get back to his old routine, and he's had physical therapy much more strenuous than this. Link is passing by, so he walks in and he takes it from here. He excuses the therapist. Owen requests another therapist, someone who will go harder on him. He's had 3 different therapists in 10 days. There's a rumor that he even made one therapist cry. Owen says all day long he sees people walk past his door, patients he could be helping, and he hears rigs, ambulances, pull up outside, and it's torture for him not to be able to work and not to be able to help. Owen says he hasn't even graduated to using the treadmill yet. And Link tells him, you know how you graduate to the treadmill? You put in the hours. Owen says he is trying to, and Link tells him no. He either cancels or he yells at the therapist when he does attend his therapy sessions. Link says a solid support system is important in rehab, and he asks if Teddy is coming by soon. And Owen isn't sure when Teddy is coming by or if Teddy is coming by. Link tells Owen to get in the wheelchair now. Levi is still on the couch playing video games, and Weber is sitting there with him watching. He tells Levi that he had his own Devin, so he knows what Levi is feeling. His patient was Chuck Higgins, a cannery worker, and they met when his wife Adele made him go on a food and blanket drive for the homeless that Chuck organized. He had a big heart, and he was a terrible card player, but he had a great taste in music. One day he came in for a simple bowel obstruction. He hated hospitals. Richard remembers the fear in his eyes when he was told that he needed surgery, but Richard told him that he would do it, and the fear went away because Chuck trusted Dr. Weber. He told Richard how comforting it was to see him, someone who looked like him in a white coat, and 3 hours later there was a horrible error in communications in the OR. He was a young attending and he was too inexperienced and timid to speak up, even though he noticed it. Levi says, and you killed him like I killed Devin. We all kill people. Richard tells Levi they don't always kill people that they are close to, like he felt with Devin and Weber felt with Chuck. It makes a loss unbearably worse. It's not even his death that haunts Richard, but the relief that Chuck had in his eyes when he saw that Richard was going to be his surgeon. The trust that he put in Weber as his friend and surgeon is what stays with Dr. Weber. He thought Richard would take care of him, and he didn't. Levi says nothing, and he keeps playing his video game. Teddy is at Joe's bar drinking her sorrows away, and Joe comes in to pick up an order, and she sees Teddy at the bar. Teddy says she hasn't had a day off in 35 days. She was on an all-nighter, and her kids are with her mother-in-law, and she's going through some stuff. Joe asks if she wants company. Teddy asks no judging, and Joe tells her as long as it goes both ways. Link takes Owen to do therapy, and he gets Owen regular clothes and gets him out of the hospital gown. He says he's a professional, but he doesn't want to see anything fall out of the gown. Link gives Owen his own clothes, and Owen says they don't look clean, they won't fit. He comes up with a million negative reasons why it won't work. He asks, isn't there someone with a broken bone or a twisted ankle? Link tells Owen he doesn't know what is going on between him and Teddy, but he repaired Owen's tibial plateau fracture beautifully, and he refuses for his work to go to waste, his good work to get ruined and go to waste. Owen says gym clothes won't help, but Link tells him to put on the clothes. Owen says people who he has worked with for years see him in the wheelchair and they walk right by him and they write him off as a surgeon. Link tells Owen if he wants to get stronger, he has to change the way he thinks. He has to change his mentality. Link says, starting now, you are no longer a patient in a hospital gown. You are a world-class athlete on the injured reserve list. You are rehabbing, okay? He tells Owen to stop pitying himself and get back on the field. Nick is asking his patient, due to get the liver, Arthur, how he is symptom-wise. Nick brings Arthur a magazine, they talk sports, and Nick invites him to a game when he's better, after the transplant, when he recovers. And his mom asks the doctor, can they not? She says it's hard enough without the false hope. That Arthur's numbers have been terrible. Arthur tells his mom it's just fun to think about. He knows it's a hard road ahead, but he's in this, he tells his mom. Nick says, can you blame her? He is number 137 on the transplant list, and he asks, yesterday did I know it was day 136? I didn't, but today is different, and you always remember the day you get your new liver. And that's how Nick breaks the news to Arthur. Nick tells Arthur he's getting a new liver today. It's his day. And Nick, Dr. Marsh, is going to go pick it up. He wishes him a happy day 137. Meredith is texting and walking in the hall. Nick says he has great news. The transplant coordinator told him the liver is a go for his patient, but the bad news is he'll miss the surgery with Dr. Hamilton. Bailey asks Meredith if she's heard from Richard. Meredith tells Bailey she knows how stubborn Richard can be. Bailey says he can't just take off as he pleases. As we know, he took off to talk to Levi. Bailey is irked because she's down another surgeon right when she was offered the opportunity. Then she stops because she sees Karasik, and Dr. Karasik and Dr. Bailey aren't exactly braiding each other's hair at sleepovers. He mentions that the residents seem mopey and overworked, and it concerns him as a member of the Fox Foundation. And he asks if Bailey is concerned about the burnout, and he's being intentionally obnoxious. Helm says they're only getting to do simple procedures, which feels like a punishment for something they didn't do. Levi is just gone. And Perez says now Dr. Weber isn't even showing up, so they aren't even sure what they are supposed to be doing. Another resident asks if Dr. Weber is still their residency director. Karasik says he was residency director for a hot second once, and he loved the parking space, but the work, Billy asks Dr. Gray if Karasik is there to give her another heart attack. Gray tells her he's on her team. Billy is taken aback. She asks what role Dr. Karasik has on the groundbreaking VIP project. Karasik jokes, if we told you, we'd have to kill you. He jokes again, oh wait, that's your resident's job, referring to the Levi incident. And then he says, oh wait, too soon. He certainly knows how to push Bailey's buttons. Meredith tells the residents to come with her. Karasik walks into Dr. David Hamilton's room and he tells him he had nothing to do with this. Meredith walks in and Kai is there with Amelia. Dr. Gray tells Dr. Hamilton he is taking a giant risk by volunteering to be the first experimental patient, patient X, and she can't thank him enough for that, but she says he is in her hospital, and in her hospital they teach. Dr. Hamilton asks what Meredith is saying. She's saying, let's throw our egos aside and open up this historic surgery to every attending and resident in the hospital. Dr. Hamilton is already filming the surgery, Meredith says, so why not share it with the world? Why not teach the world? And he says okay, and Meredith thanks him for that. And she opens his hospital room door, and piled up right outside in the door frame are all the residents. She does the rundown. The patient is 62-year-old David Hamilton, male, diagnosed with Parkinson's 8 years ago, and she gives a list of his meds, and he's here for pioneering cell therapy surgery. Back to Joe and Teddy at Joe's. Joe laments she hasn't been to a bar since she got Luna. She loves her so much, but Luna only likes 2 songs, and she doesn't want to read any other book than Where's My Belly Button. Teddy says she's boring. Joe continues, and then there's the diapers and the sleep regressions. Teddy says, wait till Luna starts walking, and Joe wakes up to her playing with pots and pans at 3 a.m. Teddy tells Joe, let's make a deal. No more saying I love my children. She says they can love their kids and still need a 5-minute break and a drink, and Joe agrees. Teddy says she couldn't go home to Allison and Leo. She couldn't walk in the door and hug them and tell them everything is okay another time. She's exhausted from it, exhausted from lying, but they are children and they have to lie to children because they can't know all the horrible thoughts that go on inside their heads. Joe asks Teddy if Teddy is okay, and she says no. She's getting another drink and playing darts because throwing sharp objects at something sounds really good. Link is doing PT on Owen, and Owen says it's too much pressure. Link encourages him, just 10 more seconds. He's stretching Owen's leg. Link says it hurts because Owen has been laying in bed for 2 weeks. And Owen says it hurts because he was in a car that somersaulted down a ravine. Link says, hypothetical, you're with someone and they know you completely despite everything and every wrong you've done. And it's great until suddenly they don't want to be in the same room as you. Owen says he doesn't want to talk about Teddy, and Link says neither do I. Owen says he thought Link and Amelia were done, and he's really confused by what Link is saying. And obviously Link is talking about Joe, but Owen's a little bit out of the loop. Link says he's confused as well. Dr. Nick Marsh, Mare's lover boy, is at the donor's hospital waiting to harvest the donor liver for his patient. Meredith texts him that Dr. Hamilton is still an ass. Then she texts him a photo of the full gallery of residents, and she texted change of plans because Dr. Hamilton has now allowed the residents into the gallery to watch. A doctor passes by and warns Nick that when he gets the liver, he should head out the back way because the grieving family of the donor has arrived, and there's nothing worse than having to walk that gauntlet. So basically he's saying, instead of walking that gauntlet, avoid the family, don't even talk to them, and you don't have to deal with it. On one hand, they're saving their sick patient's life, but someone has to die in order to make that possible. Nick goes for a walk, and he seems really pissed at what the doctor warned him. Greg asks Helm how they got the cells that they inject in the patient's brain. And Helm answers from his skin, and Meredith says it's vaguely not wrong. Amelia explains that they take stem cells from a skin biopsy, and then they reprogram them through a complex process and then differentiate them into dopamine-producing cells. By injecting them into the forebrain, they're hoping to improve the dopamine levels. Dopamine levels decrease in patients with Parkinson's. Karasik asks, what else? He says, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Just a stupid resident who asks it. Meredith says Dr. Bartley is the one who perfected the injection technique, and she walks into the OR, and Meredith asks her if she'd like to say a few words. She says in order to maximize surface area volume ratio and avoid cell death from lack of access to nutrients, they created an injector that could evenly distribute the cells along the cylindrical track, which gives them about a 30% improvement in the survival of the cells. She was anxious and awkward when speaking and very uncomfortable, and she tells Amelia she chose research for a reason. The gallery is full of people, and people are even lined up on the stairs and waiting outside, but Bailey makes her way in with Maggie and her fanboy resident. She tells the residents that they set up a video feed in the lobby for overflow, and she was expecting them to move, but they ignore her. So she says, I'm not asking, and people get up. Bailey and her fan joke about sci-fi Star Trek stuff, and her fan asks Maggie if she likes robots, and she says she likes Wall-E. Her fan, the resident, Meredith brought Bailey, says, you know who else has robots? NASA. Nick goes to talk to the donor's family. He sits with them and tells them he is here to recover their son's liver for a transplant patient. And they're in tears. They're understandably devastated. Nick tells them he's sorry for their loss, and the donor's name is James. Nick asks if there's anything they'd like to share about him. His mom says James was always singing. He even sung his first words. He had a powerful voice. His sister thought he'd be a rock star, but he liked opera, and when her friends were over, he'd sing opera so loud, and she'd be so embarrassed and tell him to shut up. When he auditioned for the San Francisco Conservatory, he asked his sister to drive him down so that he could practice, and she was so proud of him. And she tells Nick what aria he sung. Nick thanks them for sharing, and his partner tells him that it's time to go do the harvest. He tells the family he will think about James when he operates. Weber is still watching Levi play video games, and he says the aliens attacked, they blew up his universe, and left him nothing for the third time. Weber asks, you don't get bored stuck in this endless loop without ever achieving anything? Weber says he can't understand what the point of playing something is when you die over and over and over. Levi says because you learn from it. You use what you learned before each death, no matter how many times you die, or if other people die, you always get a do-over. Link is still doing PT on Hunt. He says, give me 20. And he's joking. And Owen says, what? Because he's obviously very tired and exhausted from the therapy that's already been done. He doesn't have it in him to do 20 more. They're done, and Link gets him up, and he asks Owen, when you and Altman were friends first, how long did it take to change? And Owen says 20 years. Link asks, was that awkward when he means when they slept together. But Owen says, ow, he cuts off Link, and he has pain right by his eye, and it feels better when he lays flat. And there's also significant swelling around his incision. He's in a lot of intense pain, so Link gets him to CT stat. Amelia is doing her superhero pose that she does before surgery, and Karasik explains to Kai it's something Amelia does, supposedly superhero pose, lowers cortisol and increases testosterone, so there's less stress and more confidence. And there was a study, and Kai lets Karasik know she's already read it. She knows all about this. He says a long shower does it for him. In comes Hamilton into the OR, and Amelia asks how he is feeling, and he says, like a bit player in the drama suddenly. The organ retrieval goes well, and Hamilton's surgery also goes well. In the middle of David Hamilton's surgery, Amelia gets paged to OR2 for a patient that has a CSF leak, and she learns that the patient is Owen. Amelia says Owen is her patient, and he could be suffering a complication from a previous surgery that she did. And Kai asks if Amelia is seriously considering leaving the room. Amelia says Tom knows the procedure as well as she does. He can take over, and Tom says it's a fact. Amelia tells Meredith it's Owen, and Meredith says no, it cannot be Amelia who operates on Owen because they are close, so that's unethical. She tells Amelia if she walks out of there, they would lose the FDA approval, they would lose the funding, it would stop, and the whole thing would have been for nothing. Amelia wants Tom to help Owen. He tells Amelia, you want me to miss this epic surgery, the genius who provided you with the 3D hydrogel brains? Kai says the needle and motorized injector are ready. Amelia says please, and Karasik agrees to help Owen, but he says she owes him way more than once. Amelia says she wants to be paged the second he finishes. Karasik says he wants to be credited the second they publish on this. Teddy is throwing darts, and Joe asks how Owen is doing, and Teddy says she doesn't know. She says she's done. Joe assumed she meant throwing darts because she began throwing the darts more aggressively when Joe asked about Owen. Teddy says she is done with her marriage. Joe tells Teddy she and Owen went through a terrifying experience, the accident and Farouk's heart transplant, and Teddy says that's not it, and she is drunk and blabbing away. She tells Joe Owen has done things she can't even begin to. Then she says, it's not like he killed people, but let's pretend it's that bad. She tells Joe she is tired and she is angry and she doesn't know how long she can keep this thing inside. Joe then blabs that she slept with Link and she may love him because when you have sex with your best friend and the intimacy and the generosity and orgasms are earth-shattering, it's very hard to go back. But Link doesn't love her because he is too busy loving someone who doesn't love him back. She says maybe this is what happens when you don't go to a bar for a really long time. Teddy gets a call from Tom Karasik, who tells her about Owen's CSF leak and the surgery. Owen is being wheeled into surgery, and Karasik tells him Teddy is en route, and Owen asks, you called her in a surprised way. Tom says typically he alerts the patient's family of emergent surgery because he's a softie. He says it should be a simple patch to repair the leak, and it won't take very long. He says he knows he's not Owen's first choice, and Owen says it's fine. Bailey's fan/resident is sketching in the gallery, and Bailey tells him he's extremely talented. Bailey says the surgery looks like the next installment of the Alien franchise. And he says, "You like Alien?" And she says, "Get out if you don't." They're totally vibing. She says Alien is a sci-fi classic, one of the best horror movies ever made. And her fan agrees. He says, "Thank you. They truly perfected the jump scare." Maggie says 5 years ago, the surgery would feel like science fiction, and it makes you wonder what's next. Bailey's resident says space, right, Chief? Maggie asks, who's going to space? And Bailey says, no one. Nick is retrieving the donor heart, and the surgeon who told him to walk out the back to avoid the donor parents is there in the surgery. Nick is playing the aria the donor used to sing that his sister mentioned. He asks the asshole doctor for the donor's name, and he doesn't know. He tells him his name is James. He says he has stood next to hundreds of doctors who wait in line to retrieve their organs, and to all of them, it's an organ to save their patient. But it's not just an organ. It's somebody's life, somebody's brother, somebody's child. It's the greatest gift a human being can give to another human being. Nick tells him if you want to be a great transplant surgeon, you can't forget the person who gave the gifts. Amelia takes a second before doing Dr. Hamilton's third injection. She asks if anyone has heard about Owen, but not yet. Kai tells Amelia she can check on it later because while someone Amelia cares about is getting surgery in another room, someone Kai cares about has his brain open in this room. Amelia continues the surgery. Owen made it and he's resting, and Teddy comes in. Teddy says people do crazy things when they are triggered or in a mental health crisis, and she said when her phone rang today and it was Tom, she remembered that she made decisions when she was triggered, and those decisions didn't take Owen or their family into consideration. Teddy remembered how much Owen has forgiven her for, but she doesn't know if she can forgive Owen for this, but she knows that they have to talk and they have to try. Owen says he's not triggered and he's not in a mental health crisis. He stands by what he did and how he did it. He loves Teddy and he's glad she wants to talk. Nick says if recovery is normal for his patient, he should be walking around in a few weeks, and in a month or so, they'll go to that basketball game. The patient's mom doesn't know how to thank the people who lost their son tonight, the donor's family. Amelia sees Kai on a bench outside the hospital, and she sits with her, and Kai says all day long she's been racking her brain trying to figure out who in their right mind would have left that surgery. But Amelia was prepared to, and then it dawned on Kai that Amelia is someone who loves her people so much and so hard that if they're in trouble, everything else just falls away. Amelia responds, guilty as charged. Kai says she has never met anyone like that. That it's, Amelia says infuriating and Kai says inspiring. Amelia tells Kai she can't believe they pulled off the surgery, and Kai tells her she should believe it. Link is getting out of the shower at Joe's place, and Joe walks in the bathroom and startles him. They kiss, and Link apologizes and asks how they're going to do this. He asks Joe if she wants him to move out, and she says maybe. Levi is still with Weber. He says some people don't like open world role-playing games because there are too many choices. But the beauty of the game design is that you get to create your own character, and you get to be whoever you want to be. You level up abilities to be anyone you want to be, and if you fail, you get to try again and in a completely different way. You can go somewhere else or take a different path. The possibilities are endless. Weber says that beauty is in medicine too. He tells Levi to think about it. When you have foundational knowledge and a skill set, the possibilities are endless. You can choose your specialty or a form of research or whether you want to teach. There are multiple paths that exist to save lives. He tells Schmidt he belongs on one of those paths to save lives, and he asks Schmidt to come back. He tells Levi they can find their way together, they can find a new way. Levi tells Weber he appreciates him coming and trying to salvage his career and rescue him, but he's too late. Levi says he's already bled out, there's nothing left to save. Levi tells Weber he's going to lay down, and he gives Weber the game controller and tells him he can play if he wants. Meredith's voiceover asks, when people hear our names, what will they remember? What did we leave behind? Bailey is sitting outside of the hospital staring at the stars in the sky. Her fan comes out and asks, so when does it start? And she asks him, when does what start? And he says, flight surgeon training. He asks, you have to get board certified in aerospace medicine, right? He tells Bailey, please tell me you said yes to your friend. And she says, of course she did not. Her fan says, he called you. You can't say no. What if you are the chosen one? The only one in the galaxy who can take the job and restore the galaxy to order. She says she prefers to think of herself as Rey. He says Rey is the chosen one after Luke's fall. He says she said herself it's her dream to work for NASA. Bailey says she's not in a place to be making decisions based on her dreams. She tells him he has no idea that the only bright spot around there lately has been him. And he kisses Bailey right outside the hospital where she is chief, where everyone can see. She is shocked and horrified. She doesn't reciprocate, and her fan says he must have misread the situation, and he awkwardly says, "Good night, Chief Bailey," and walks away. And Bailey is left standing there completely stunned. Meredith continues her voiceover. She asks, did we blaze trails? Did we guide a new generation? Did we bestow all the wisdom we could? Have we paved a legacy? Meredith gets to Nick's house. It's a surprise visit, and he says it's like he's still dreaming. She told him she pulled off the surgery and wanted to update him in person. And Nick never had a doubt in his mind that Meredith would succeed. She says there was only one small hiccup, that the only person she wanted to celebrate with was 1,500 miles away. He jokes, what a joke. Seriously? Seriously was the intern's word in the beginning of the show. Particularly Meredith and Derek used it, and now with Nick, they are using it. She finishes her voiceover, let's be known for who we are, and the episode ends. That does it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Please like, comment your thoughts on this episode. I liked it much better than most of the episodes of late. Subscribe if you're interested in the content. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.